Hello, and welcome back to another great episode of hashtag Screw the W2. And my guest today, well, for starters, I've actually been on his show, but he has another interesting show that relates to the W2. I'll just leave it at that and have him go into detail. But with that, Brian O'Neill, welcome to the show.
Yeah, John, great to see you. Thanks for having me on. I'm biased, but I love the title of your show and the fact that you hashtagged it. That's super awesome. And yeah, we met. You were on my podcast, the W2 Prison Break Show. So we're very aligned in how we feel about the W2.
Exactly. So now with that being said, Brian, obviously you've got a number of projects going on, but can you take us back in time? Take us back, what was your previous or last W-2 job? What was it? What was it like? What was an average day like for you?
Yeah, so my last job, I worked for the same company. I was in corporate for 25 years. So right out of
Okay.
college, I was in corporate sales. So I got out of college and I went to work for Enterprise Rent a Car and,
Okay.
good management training program. I was spoon fed that since I could talk, and that's the path that I followed. I did that for probably 3 or 4 years, and I had a couple of sales jobs in between that. And then I
Okay.
landed with this elevator company, and I worked for them for 17 years in a sales capacity.
Okay.
And I had a variety of different areas that I covered, but I was really doing the same thing. And a typical day for me would be I was gone. I was traveling all the time. We would go to these remote locations where they would need these service elevators. So I was on an airplane every other week, and I
Wow.
did that for a super long time and became really accustomed and comfortable with it, to the point where I tell people all the time I could walk through O'Hare Airport with a blindfold on. That's how well I knew it.
And there's probably going to be a
And
pickpocketer. It's like, hey, I see opportunity.
exactly. And, John, I really just got to the point where, especially when I had my family, I met my wife here. We had a son, we have a son, and he got to the point where he started noticing that I was gone, right? And started voicing his opinion about it. And that really kind of started to get me down the path of like, hey, I'm probably going to miss half this kid's life
Mhm.
if I continue on this path of traveling 100,000 miles a year and being gone every week, and then him having anxiety about me being gone.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that share, on their deathbed, no one says, boy, I really wish I spent more time at the office. And then on that tangent, boy, I really wish I didn't go to all those events my kids had. It was just a waste of time or anything like that. So,
Totally.
yeah. Now, what, Brian, you kind of shared it, and obviously, I think a lot of my listeners can relate, just, wanting to spend more time with your family. In your case, you're on an airplane every other week. Some W-2 jobs aren't quite that travel intensive, but once you have that realization, what were your next steps to get out of the rat race, and how long did that take?
Sure. And this is a great question, John, because I had been trying to leave said W2 for a long time. I was probably looking at other stuff, whether it was trading stocks or franchising or even real estate, which
Sure.
ultimately ended up being my business. But I was dabbling in it here and there, right? But not really fully committed. I was really just distracting myself in hindsight
Hmm.
from the fact that I hated my job and
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it anymore. So what I really ended up, and it was really my son that was the straw that broke the camel's back, right? The
Okay.
fact that he's telling me, "Hey, Dad, I don't like it when you leave. I'm scared. I don't like to be alone by myself with mom in the house, and I'm missing him grow up. I come home, he looks different, he's talking different.
Hmm.
That just kind of chipped away at me, and I said, okay, I this is it. I'm not going to miss this kid's life. I got one shot. My father was gone for most of my life, traveling, doing the same thing. I'm repeating the process, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing this. I'm breaking the mold. So I had this moment. My son gave me the courage to quit being afraid and to try. I hired a coach. That's what I did. I found somebody who was doing exactly what I wanted to do, had done it, and I invested in myself. That was the big gap for me. The reason that I stayed in my W-2 and couldn't leave after 7 to 10 years of trying was that I was trying to do it all on my own. So I got to the point where I hired a coach. And after that, 7 to 10 years got smushed down to 9 months. That's how long it took me
Wow.
to leave my job.
Wow, impressive. So, and with that, since you hired a coach and then helped you, maybe strategize or maybe even focus of here's what I'm going to do, here's how I'm going to do it. Do you remember what your freedom day was, your last day at that W-2 job?
Yeah, it was September of 2020. So yes, I quit my job during COVID.
Okay.
Yeah, which actually, I know it was tough for a lot of people, John. A lot
Hmm.
of people went through a lot. It was one of the best years of my life because
Yeah.
unlike a lot of folks who froze, my coach is another reason to have a coach and a mentor. When COVID hit, he said he got in front of our entire group and he said, "Don't freeze. Don't
Yeah.
freeze. You need to double down. Like this is an opportunity." And he was a
Yeah.
million percent right. And I was able to do enough real estate deals to set me up and leave my job that year.
Yeah, makes sense.
Mhm.
Now, looking back, Brian, and I know you mentioned obviously the struggles, your son growing up so much when you were gone and expressing his, disheartenment or distaste of you being gone so much. But looking back from the W-2, is there anything you do miss or any regrets that you have from leaving back in 2020?
Not a single one. I
Okay.
love the question. I mean, I have no regrets of leaving my job. I mean, it was just, it was long overdue
Hmm.
and I stayed in it way longer than I needed to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
guilty there
that's
too.
okay though. You too, you shared the same thing on my show when we interviewed, and I hope people check that out. But, you, when you're around people who all think the same, you end up thinking the same as they do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm around people who think differently, who think the
Mhm.
way that I think, and that's why I'm at the point where I'm at now, and I'm going to continue to elevate. So I get further away from the W-2. One thing I tell people all the time, and I believe this to be true, is you could take everything away from me tomorrow. I could lose everything. You could take my businesses away, everything I got. I would never have to go back and work a W-2 because I
Mhm.
know how, because I've invested in myself, because I have hired multiple coaches. You can't take the knowledge away from me, right? So
Mhm.
people who are losing their jobs, which is happening more and more in this country now, okay, you have to be prepared for that because
Yeah,
they don't need a reason to let you go. That you could walk into work tomorrow and they cut you for no reason. They don't need to give you one. And if you don't have a backup plan, if you don't have a skill, you might not be able to find another job. Like I can't encourage people enough to understand this is a real issue. This is a
yeah.
real problem, and you got to be ready for it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think as a nation, people, I think we all have subpar plan A's, but it's like no one really has a plan B. It's like, what would happen if this happened? Well, I haven't thought about it, or I don't know what I'd do. It's,
Yeah.
we don't think of how things can change so much on a dime or moment's notice. So,
No.
on that tangent, Brian, and I know we're, obviously 3 years passed since you left the W-2. Obviously, you said it was long overdue, but, congrats on leaving back in September of 2020. Since that time, what's been the best thing about your journey, or what's been the greatest, difference in your life since then?
Yeah. And when I left, I love this question too, John. Great question. So when I left my job, I just wanted to get out of my job, right? Like I just didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to do something different. I just didn't want to miss my kid growing up. I just wanted him to
Yeah,
stop saying that to me. And before I answer your question, this is another important point. Is like
sure.
when you're when you're leaving your job to start a business, right? You have to have a reason to not quit because becoming a business owner is not easy. Leaving your job and
No.
quitting and starting a business is not easy. You got to have a reason not to quit. And my reason, you got to find what that is for you. My reason is my kid is never saying that to me again. Every time I think about cashing it in, I listen, I hear the words, Dad, I don't like when you leave. I'm afraid. I like that. And I made the promise to him, you're never saying that to me again. So to answer your question about what's the best thing, it's like that's that right there. Like he doesn't have to say that to me anymore. I don't miss his baseball games. I go to all of his baseball games. He plays travel baseball. I get to see it all. right? I see other people. I was at a baseball game of his last night, and the dad showed up about 15, 20 minutes late. He's in his pilot's uniform. Works for Southwest. He's on the plane. I mean, good on him for showing up, but there's going to be
Right.
games that missed because of his life, right? Because of his job.
Hmm.
And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, that was me. That was me. I would have missed it. I would have missed those games. So the best thing about it is the time and the freedom to do what I want whenever I want with who I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Life is too short to have your schedule dictated by a boss or a work schedule that, like you said, within a moment's notice can say, "Oh, you're done. You're fired. We're doing layoffs."
Yeah. And I like being unfireable.
Yeah. Now, Brian, thinking back, and maybe you can relate to this. Having a reason to leave your job. Obviously, spent too long in the job, was long overdue. But for any of my listeners that maybe empathize with you, like, gosh, I missed another one of my son's baseball game, or I'd really like to take this vacation, but I'm only getting 2 weeks a year, or whatever the case may be. But at the same token, they just feel stuck in their job. Like, I can't leave because the health insurance, the benefits, the stability, whatever the case may be. What advice would you give to them to, encourage them to take that leap of faith and maybe take that next step so they can leave their W-2 job?
Yeah, I mean, you could do an entire episode just on the question you just asked, okay? Because that is so common. I can't stress enough that what we believe, okay, what we believe and our self-limiting beliefs, if we believe that we can't do something because of this particular excuse, right? Because of the health benefits, because of the steady paycheck, because of your retirement account or whatever it is, because that won't work, right? We put these beliefs on us, and then we go out in the real world and we look for validation
Mhm.
for those beliefs, and we ask the people who are in the W-2 with us, oh, no,
Yeah.
don't leave, risky, health insurance. Like, look, here's the reality about health insurance. If that's your reason not to leave your job, don't take this the wrong way, but it's absolutely ridiculous. Okay. That should not be the reason to leave your job, because I pay less in health insurance right now as a business owner than I
Yeah.
did when I was employed.
Mhm.
Okay. You're going to pay less taxes as a business owner if you set it up the right way. So
Yeah.
step number one is to start thinking differently. And you cannot associate with people who think like W-2 employees. If you want to be a business owner, go talk to business owners.
Mhm.
All right. Listen to your podcast. All right. Don't continue to look for the information from the people who are going to give you the answers that you want to hear because you're too scared or you
Mhm.
don't believe in yourself, right? Most business owners are just simply not mentally prepared to become business owners. And it's because they
No.
talk to themselves this way. So that would
Mhm.
be my first advice. Take that first step. Look, look for the answers in the right places. You're looking for the answers in the wrong places right now.
Well, and I think even just to add on to that, really need to memorize this one of these days, but I think it was Jim Rohn that said you're the average of the five people you spend the most time around with. So spend more time with five other people. If the other five people you're spending the most time with, like you said, usually your coworkers are limiting you and bringing you down, basically.
Totally. I have a
Yeah,
quick story to tell you if you got a minute
yeah, sure, go ahead.
about when I left my job. Okay, so I've got I'm 9 months into my real estate business. I'm doing well. I got a bunch of properties. I haven't necessarily replaced my income, but I'm pretty close.
Sure.
And it comes time to leave my job, and I was nervous about it. I was still nervous about it. I've been there for 17 years. I knew these people. They were my friends. Like, I was still health benefits, retirement
Yeah.
account, like all that stuff, even though I knew that that wasn't the answer. So I started talking to people. I interviewed about three or four people in my real estate group that had already left their job. Okay. And they were all like, yeah, I went through this too. Don't worry about it. They really gave me the answers that I wanted to hear. Again, I asked the right people.
Hmm.
Then I asked a friend of mine that I've known since I was 16 years old.
Okay.
I said, hey, I'm thinking about quitting my job. I got this real estate thing going on. I think I'm going to leave. And he said to me, he's like, man, that sounds pretty risky. Why would you do that? Yeah, but he's a W-2 employee for life.
Yeah.
Still has a W-2 job. I love the guy. If you're listening, I love you, man. But that's when I heard him say that and everybody else said, Lee, don't worry about it. It's good. That's when I knew I was making the right decision.
Yeah.
So I hope that resonates with people, but you got to look for the answers in the right place.
Yeah. And I've heard that, I don't know how many times, when I left and other people have left, oh, it's risky. And I just kind of throw it back on. It's like, do you think it's not risky to have 100% of your active income coming from one source, from one boss who at a moment's notice can fire you? I mean, you want to talk about risk, let's be honest.
And anyone who answers yes to that, or that's the less risky version, then that we need to have an intervention on that.
Exactly. So now, as we wrap this up, Brian, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on my show. I've started dubbing this the hashtag unscrewed moment. If you want to share, where people can find you, learn more about you, maybe new projects you're working on, or things that you're excited about rest of 2023 and into 2024.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, I mean, if anyone wants to learn more, if you go to my website, it's w2prisonbreak.com. You can find information about me, my podcast, the W2 Prison Break Show. And then I have something that I've just developed. I've been working on it for several months. And because people ask me this, like, hey, Brian, you make it sound so easy, right? Like, how did you do this? I'm like, well, it wasn't easy, but I came up with this, I started a transformation journey several years ago, 5 to 7 years ago, before I left my W2, before I found my coach. And I just put it together and I said, okay, I did these 7 things. It's these 7 steps. And I call it the 777 life transformation method. Kind of long winded, but it's 7 steps, 7 days a week for 7 years to live a phenomenal life. Again, I go back to most people are not mentally ready to make a change in their life, especially leaving their job and starting a business. So I have a free checklist that people can download if you go to w2prisonbreak.com/777. You can get the checklist for free and it has the 7 steps there.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And again, for all those listening, I'll have those links and web addresses in the show notes. So with that, Brian, thanks again for sharing your story. And also, again, thanks for having me on your podcast as well. And look forward to seeing what you do here the rest of the year.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Great to see you again. Thanks for having me on.